So post uni, I remember we split our separate ways because you were in third year, I was in first year, and you said you wanted to do an LPC and you dipped. I mean, I never heard from you again because you were doing the LPC, which is so intensive and so difficult to complete. So tell people about that and just give like a real insight on how difficult it actually is to go through an LPC and then make it to where you've got to now, because it's not a linear straight pathway. People drop in and out all the time and they find it really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, even before the LPC, so I studied politics as an undergrad, as you know, but I had to do the GDL, which is the graduate diploma in law. That's what people call the law conversion. If you've got another undergraduate discipline and you want to practice law, you have to do the GDL. That was the most difficult academic year of my life because they cram. I mean, not least financially. You know, I was working at the Heathrow Airport at silly hours, just to sort of get some money for it. And even then, you know, I couldn't afford the whole course by myself. So it's super expensive, which bars access to the profession for a lot of people. It's a massive barrier because if you're not fortunate enough to be able to have part-time work and family who could help you through the course, it's just not going to happen. So I was quite fortunate in that regard.
Yeah.
But the GDL ultimately is all of the compulsory modules that people studied on the 3-year LLB within about 9 months. And they're not modules that you necessarily want to do. So I knew that I wanted to do legal aid, public law in the sphere of immigration and asylum, so challenging government policy. Although, in fact, I wasn't set on immigration and asylum at that point, but that's neither here nor there. But I had to study property law, business law, all these things. You know, I mean, I couldn't care less. I literally could not care less. I had to learn about quorum at board meetings and sharehold transfers, and I was just thinking, okay, look, this is a means to an end. But it was one of the most anxiety-inducing courses I've ever sat through. And that's, you know, having jumped through every academic hoop to get an undergraduate degree, and that came along. But even after that, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get a job. So I applied to a number of places to try and get my LPC, the compulsory course you have to do as a solicitor, trying to get that funded. Graduated into a recession, basically. Everyone was like, nope, sorry, not going to happen. And the caliber of firm that was paying for that course wasn't the type of firm that I wanted to work for. So again, had to bite the bullet and take another sort of financial risk and do the LPC. I'll be honest, that course isn't as difficult as the GDL. The LPC is very much sort of rote learning.
Okay.
If you're willing to sort of sit there and tab up a textbook and you've got a bit of nous about you, you can get through that. That's not too tough. But it's more the idea that you have your undergrad, you've then done the graduate diploma in law, you still have to do another course, and even then you're not guaranteed to be a solicitor, because you then have to get what's known as a training contract.
No.
And it's only after a 2-year training contract that I could become a solicitor. And to get that, you know, I had an unpaid internship for a month, I paralegaled for a year, had to sit another set of accreditation exams, and then got my training contract. You know, so looking at it all in, you're looking at the best part of a decade, man, just to get to entry level. Yeah.
Jeez, man. And I thought medics had it bad, but that's even worse. Like that's you've gone through a normal degree, so that's 3 years. We were in the 3 grand, so we're like, okay. But then you got bumped after that into the 9 grand bracket as well. So I'm like, geez, that's
14.
That's a big
14.
expense.
The GDL was 14.
Again to do the third thing.
GDL was 14, and then the
14.
and the LPC. The LPC was around 17. I think they're more expensive now than they were then.
Why did they make the barrier to entry so high? Do you think it's simply like a monetary thing, as if like, can you back it money-wise and you'll make it? Because it doesn't seem like it's based on merit. It seems like it's being based on money now, which isn't a fair comparison to make.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's why there's loads of discourse about access to the profession, because these are compulsory courses, and of course there are bursaries, there are grants or whatever, but for that person from, you know, a single parent family in the inner city who isn't privately educated, to have the stuff on paper, not necessarily up here, I'm talking just the stuff on paper, to satisfy someone that they're worthy of that bursary, what are the odds? You know, what are the odds? And yeah, 1 or 2 will be super exceptional and do it, but there are a lot of brilliant minds out there that are precluded from accessing the profession because they don't have the funds, or they can't manage to secure the part-time job while studying for one reason or another. You know, and access to the profession is huge, and it's not just at entry level, man. It's when you look at really well-respected legal rankings, when you look at the proportion of qualified solicitors, partners, barristers that come from a black or ethnic minority background, that's race. And then if you want to talk about class, it's probably even more divisive. because even
Yeah.
a lot of the people I know from Asian backgrounds anyway who have managed to get into this profession and absolutely excel, they wouldn't necessarily have come from the lowest income families in London. They would have been what we would call middle class. But it's so
Yeah.
difficult for working class families or kids to follow that dream, without having to be the cream of the crop.
Jeez, man. That's a shame because people are just going to see that course and that route and say, well, forget it, I'll go into something else that's probably more attainable and will get me a quicker turnaround of money. I mean, imagine if you're being a graduate now, today, and all those Mickey Mouse courses that people used to call it, like, for example, I did geography. I'm not sure if your course would potentially come under that because it doesn't take you to a straight job afterwards. So all those courses are just going to evaporate and it becomes harder and harder for someone to take that leap of faith to then take that much debt on themselves and then go into that course, not even knowing you're going to be given a job at the end.
Well, this is the thing. So what a lot of people do in that situation, if they do want to become lawyers, is they go down the corporate route because, as I said, those are the people that will fund you for those courses, and those are the people that will give you the massive salary. Not
Yeah.
because they want to be corporate lawyers, but because they've now realised that that's the only feasible way of becoming a lawyer. If I sat down and had a candid conversation over a few drinks with a lot of my mates who are corporate lawyers, and I told them what I do, they would say, "Bro, I would switch jobs with you in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the money." You know, they all wanted to get into law for a specific purpose. None of them, it doesn't really do it for them sitting there and dotting the i's and crossing the t's in contracts for people who would speak to them like absolute shit. Now, I'm not saying that's what every corporate lawyer does. I'm not saying that's what every corporate client is like. But the vast majority of people I know in that line of work, it's not a particularly fulfilling career if you're talking about your moral compass. And I think one thing anyway
No.
that the pandemic taught a lot of people is that if your day to day isn't fulfilling you to that extent, what does that money really get you? Where does it get you in the end? And it sort of recalibrated a lot of people's priorities. And that's why I'm now having those conversations with people. And now, if you look at our team at my firm, we have a lot of ex Magic Circle, Silver Circle lawyers leaving their big boy firms and coming to us and saying, "This is what we want to do now, because this is where our passion is. Will you help us? Will you train us?" So these are qualified solicitors coming from firms where they were earning 3 times as much, coming to us, taking the pay cut, and saying, "Look, teach me from scratch. This is what I want to do."
That's amazing, man. That's actually really good. That gives you hope, innit? That it's not just about the money. It's about like having some fulfillment and doing something that's technically the right thing to help people that are less able to represent themselves, I guess, is the clearest thing.